Why a married man remains emotionally connected to you. Carl Jung. Have you ever wondered why he keeps coming back, even though he has a ring on his finger? Why do the messages not stop? The stares persist, and that emotional connection seems stronger than any commitment he has made to someone else? The answer is not on the surface of desire or simple physical attraction. It is buried in the deepest layers of the male psyche, in territories that Carl Jung mapped with surgical precision and that most people are completely unaware of. There is something in you that activates in him an unconscious search, a psychological projection so powerful that it surpasses logic, morality, and even the love he says he feels for his wife. It's not about you being better or worse than her. It's about you acting out something he's lost, something his male psyche desperately tries to regain. In this video, you'll discover the hidden psychological mechanisms that keep a married man emotionally attached to you, and finally understand what's really going on beyond the words he can never explain. 1. The projection of the anima, you as a mirror of his soul. When a married man can't emotionally disconnect from you, there's something much deeper going on than simple attraction or physical desire. He is projecting onto you an inner image that he has always carried, an ideal female figure that lives in his unconscious and that rarely finds correspondence in the real world. This image has nothing to do with who you really are. It has to do with who he needs you to be to fill a psychological void that even he himself does not fully understand. This internal female figure functions as an invisible mold. When you show up in his life, and by some combination of characteristics, your voice, your way of laughing, your way of looking at him, your emotional energy, you accidentally fit into that mold. Something awakens. He feels that you get it in a way that no one else can. Feels like it can be true to you, that you see parts of it that are hidden in marriage. And this creates an emotional connection that seems inexplicable, even irrational. His marriage can be stable, functional, even happy in many ways. But there is a brutal difference between stability and psychological completeness. The wife can perfectly fulfill the social role. She can be an exemplary mother, a reliable companion, a partner in life plans. But if it doesn't activate that internal image that he carries, something is missing. And when you arise and awaken that sleeping part, it experiences a sense of being complete that has nothing to do with conscious choice or moral character. You did not choose to be that mirror. He didn't choose to project it onto you. But now that it's happened, the connection becomes almost addictive for him. Every conversation with you feeds into that projection. Every moment by his side reinforces the illusion that you are the embodiment of what he has always sought. And the more time passes, the harder it becomes for him to disconnect, because disconnecting from you would mean disconnecting from that part of himself that finally seems to have found expression in the outside world. 2. The unresolved mother complex he seeks in you. Every man carries within him an emotional mark of the first woman he met, his mother. That mark doesn't disappear when he grows up, marries, or builds his own family. She remains active in the unconscious, secretly influencing the type of woman he is attracted to, the type of emotional connection he seeks, and even the type of love he can or cannot feel. When this mark has not been well resolved psychologically, it turns into an eternal search for something that was incomplete in childhood. If his mother has been emotionally distant, he may look to you for a warm and welcoming presence that he never received. If you were overprotective, you can seek emotional freedom. If he was critical and demanding, he can seek unconditional approval. The bottom line is that he's not looking for you as a real person. It is seeking to repair an old wound through you. And this creates an emotional intensity that he cannot explain rationally. His wife probably doesn't activate this dynamic in the same way, perhaps because it represents something else in his life: security, stability, a shared life project. But these qualities don't fill the emotional hole that comes from childhood. You may unknowingly be offering exactly the kind of emotional response he never received as a child. And that's extremely powerful. He may say that you make him feel alive, understood, accepted. But what's really happening is that you're functioning as a reparative figure. You are symbolically healing something that his mother left open. And as long as this is not recognized and consciously worked on by him, the emotional connection with you will remain intense and seemingly inexplicable. It will keep coming back, not because you are irreplaceable, but because you are temporarily filling a void that has existed for decades. If you want to understand why a married man remains emotionally connected to you, it's not chance. It's an unconscious bond, explained by Carl Jung. Jungmethod, pinned in the first comment. 3. The repressed shadow that only awakens in his presence. There is a version of him that cannot exist within marriage, a part of who he really is or who he would like to be that needs to be hidden to maintain the image of a responsible husband, a present father, a reliable man. This repressed version does not disappear. She lies asleep, waiting for an opportunity to manifest herself. And when you show up, for some reason that isn't always clear, you become the perfect channel for that part of him to finally breathe. Perhaps it is a more spontaneous, less controlled version. Perhaps it is a more adventurous side, which takes risks. It may be a sensitive part that he has learned to hide because men don't show weakness, or a creative and dreamy part that was sacrificed in the name of financial stability. Whatever it is, that psychological shadow comes to life when he's with you, and it generates a sense of authenticity that he doesn't experience anywhere else. In marriage, he plays a role, not necessarily dishonestly, but because married life requires certain adjustments, certain social masks. He can't be completely unpredictable when he has bills to pay. You can't be too vulnerable when you need to be the emotional anchor of the family. Over time, these roles harden, and he becomes more and more distant from whole parts of himself. With you, these rules do not exist. There is no mortgage to pay together, children to educate, families to impress. The relationship exists outside the structures that imprison him. And in this space of freedom, his shadow emerges. He laughs differently. He speaks differently. He dreams differently. And the more he experiences this feeling of being himself, the more difficult it becomes to fully return to the role he plays at home. You're not just offering companionship or affection. It is offering something much rarer and more precious. Permission for him to be who he really is, without judgments or expectations that need to be fulfilled. 4. The mistress archetype and the illusion of the lost self. You occupy a very specific psychological space in his life, the territory of undomesticated desire, of passion that has not been transformed into routine, of fantasy that remains untouched by the reality of everyday life. This space is powerful because it lives outside of responsibilities, joint bank accounts, discussions about who will pick up children from school. It's a space where he can project an idealized version of himself, younger, more interesting, more alive. While the wife represents the world of concrete reality and obligations fulfilled, you represent possibilities. It represents the idea that his life could have been different, that he can still be someone else, that not everything is defined and closed. This does not mean that he does not love his wife or that the marriage is bad. It means that the human psyche needs more than just stability to feel complete. It also needs mystery, surprise, renewal. The problem is that this need for renewal, when projected onto someone else, creates a dangerous illusion. He begins to believe that you are the source of this vital energy, when in fact you are only the trigger that awakens something that has always been inside him. If he left the marriage and stayed with you, eventually the same dynamic would repeat itself. Passion would become routine. The mystery would dissolve in daily coexistence. And he would seek again, outside the relationship, that feeling of being alive that he now projects on you. You have become, unintentionally, the symbol of everything he feels he has lost or never had. And as long as you occupy that archetypal place in his psyche, the emotional connection will remain intense. It's not about who you are as a real person, with flaws and complexities. It's about what you represent in the internal theater of his mind. And symbolic representations are extremely difficult to abandon, because abandoning them means confronting the reality that dissatisfaction is not outside of one, but within. And few men have the courage for this type of confrontation. 5. Psychological differentiation. Why you represent freedom. When a couple lives together for years, something inevitable happens. Identities begin to merge. Decisions are made together. Tastes adjust to each other. Friends become shared. Life becomes a collective project where the I gradually gives way to the we. This is not necessarily a bad thing. It is part of building a shared life, but it also has a high psychological cost. The feeling of individuality is diluted over time. To him, you represent something completely different. You are separate from the structure of his life. She is not intertwined in financial decisions. She does not know her in-laws. She does not participate in complex family dynamics. This separation creates a psychological space where he can feel like an individual again, not just half of a couple. With you, he is not so-and-so's husband or the father of the children. He is just himself, without context, without history, without expectations accumulated over the years. This sense of freedom is intoxicating. When he's with you, he doesn't have to negotiate about what to do on the weekend. You do not need to consider your wife's mood before making a decision. You don't need to weigh every word to avoid old conflicts that still reverberate. The conversation flows naturally because it does not carry the weight of years of living together. Each encounter is new, light, without the gravity that long-term intimacy inevitably brings. Marriage, no matter how healthy, tends to create fixed patterns of interaction. He knows what she's going to say before she even speaks. She knows how he will react in certain situations. This predictability brings security, but also a certain death of spontaneity. With you, everything is still unpredictable. He still needs to discover who you are. And in this process of discovery, he rediscovers parts of himself that had been forgotten in the marital routine. The emotional connection persists because through you, it reconnects with your own sense of being a whole, independent person, not just a cog in a larger family cog. 6. The existential void that marriage doesn't fill. Adulthood brings with it a series of achievements that should, in theory, generate deep satisfaction. Established career, established family, financial stability achieved. But often these achievements reveal something disturbing. They don't fill the existential void that many men carry. No matter how many goals are achieved, there is still an unanswered question. Is that all? And when this question arises, it does not respect marriage vows or commitments made. This emptiness has nothing to do with the quality of the marriage. A man can have a wonderful wife, children he loves deeply, a life that many would envy, and still feel that something fundamental is missing. It is not a problem that can be solved with more communication or couples therapy. It's a deeper question about meaning, purpose, and authenticity. And when you show up in his life unintentionally, you can become the temporary answer to a question that he doesn't even know how to formulate correctly. You bring novelty into a life that has become too predictable. It brings emotional intensity to an existence that has settled into the lukewarmness of routine. It brings the feeling of being alive in a daily life that seems just an automatic sequence of obligations fulfilled. It's not that you're special in any objective sense. It's just that you arrived at the right time, when he was vulnerable to this search for something that would break the existential monotony that suffocated him. Marriage offers many valuable things: companionship, shared history, co-building a legacy. But it rarely offers transcendence. It rarely offers that feeling of touching something bigger, of living fully instead of just surviving the days. You, even if temporarily and illusory, offer this sensation. And as long as he believes you can fill that void that marriage can't reach, the emotional connection will remain. Because disconnecting from you would mean going back completely to that emptiness without even the illusion that there is something or someone that can fill it. 7. Psychic compensation. What you offer that she can't. The human psyche works constantly seeking balance. When one area of life is overly rigid, the mind seeks compensation through something or someone that brings the opposite. If his marriage has become a structure of responsibilities and fixed roles, the psyche will seek spontaneity and freedom. If the relationship with his wife has become too predictable and secure, he will seek excitement and uncertainty. You probably represent exactly what is absent in his married life. This is not because the wife is inadequate or insufficient. It happens because no single person can fulfill all the psychological aspects that a human being needs. A wife can be excellent at what she does, taking care of the house, educating the children, maintaining the emotional stability of the family. But these qualities, as good as they are, do not activate all dimensions of the male psyche. Some parts of it need other experiences, other energies, other types of connection to feel alive. You can offer lightness while marriage offers weight. He may offer admiration while his wife offers constructive criticism. You can offer non-judgmental listening while at home every conversation comes loaded with history and expectations. It can offer sexual desire without the complications of long-term intimacy, where bodies age together and passion needs to compete with fatigue and transforming hormones. Each of these things you offer works as compensation for something that has become unbalanced in his life. The danger of this dynamic is that it can perpetuate itself indefinitely. As long as you continue to offer this psychic compensation, he will continue to seek you, even without conscious intention of leaving the marriage. Because in his mind, you're not competing with his wife. It's filling a completely different space. The wife takes care of reality. You take care of the fantasy, the renewal, the part of him that needs to breathe outside of obligations. And as long as this division works psychologically for him, the emotional connection with you will remain strong, because you have become essential not as a substitute for his wife, but as a necessary psychological complement. 8. The interrupted individuation cycle and its archetypal function. Every human being is in a continuous process of becoming who they really are. This process does not end when the person gets married, has children, or achieves professional success. It continues, silently, pressing beneath the surface of everyday life. But marriage and the responsibilities of adulthood often interrupt this process. The man stops asking himself who he is and starts to work on autopilot, fulfilling roles without questioning whether those roles still make sense to who he has become. When you come into his life, something in this dormant process awakens. You become, unknowingly, a figure that facilitates his return to essential questions that had been abandoned. Who am I beyond my social roles? What do I really want out of life? Am I living authentically or just acting out what is expected of me? These questions are uncomfortable and dangerous to the stability of the marriage. That is why they were buried. But you bring them back to the surface. This function you fulfill is archetypal. You're not just a woman who attracted a married man. You are a psychological catalyst who appeared at a time when he was ready to resume a process of self-knowledge that had been interrupted. The problem is that he confuses the process with the person. It believes that you are essential to this awakening, when in fact you are only the trigger. The journey of becoming who he really is needs to be done by him, alone, not through an emotional connection with another person. The intensity of his emotional connection with you will diminish only when he consciously recognizes what is really happening. As long as he projects salvation from your existential dissatisfaction onto you, the bond will remain. But if he starts doing the necessary inner work, questioning his choices, confronting his renunciations, seeking authenticity within his own life rather than through someone else, the psychological need you fill will gradually fade. You will have fulfilled your archetypal function, to awaken in him something that needed to be agreed upon. And then, naturally, he'll be able to move on, with or without you, because the process wasn't about you from the beginning.